to the Mintner method. I'm your host, Andrew Mintner, and on today's video, we are going to break down the game of the week between Georgia and Texas. So, right here, we're starting out. As you can see, I got a million fucking tabs open. So, it's going to be a lot more dense than normal, but I think, people want that. They want to see the intricacies of these matchups. So, right here, we're using early downs data, and the Georgia-Texas data here is based off of the versus Power 5 teams, okay? Now, Georgia in our database has only played Power 5 teams. We have filtered out their one game where they played, I believe it was Tennessee Tech, so that game is not factored into this data. So, and Texas's data is only against Power 5 teams in this little snippet here. So, as you can see, Texas on early downs is elite. On both sides of the ball. They are just really, really good. Now, these rankings are out of 69 Power 5 teams. And I say Power 5 because it includes what's left of the Pac-12, right? And so, as you can see, they're great all the way around on early downs. Now, Georgia, on the other hand, is solid offensively. Defensively, pretty average, if we're being real here. But let's dive into a little bit more just to kind of get you an understanding of what we're looking at here. So, realistically, from an offensive standpoint, Texas is just as good against weaker opponents as they are against better opponents. They, here in their depth profile, EPA for attempts 9 yards or less, 0.3416. And then on, big dog attempts down the field, 10 yards or more, 0.638. So when we filter that to look at better competition versus Power 5 opponents, you can see they're right on par. There's not really much to take away from that, right? In Georgia, their rankings are going to be the same simply because this data only contains Power 5 data. And it filters out, like I said, Division II teams. So you can see they're 36th overall in EPA per attempts 10 yards or more down the field. And then on the shorter stuff, they're 13th overall in EPA per Mickey Mouse attempt. The thing that is the most eye-opening in all of the data that I've looked at, we'll give you a little baseline here for Georgia and whatnot. They're 36th in Mickey Mouse attempt on defense. And then, they are going to be very bad down the field, which is alarming to say the least. 109th in passes 10 yards or more down the field. So that is something that we're going to have to take a look on, right? But the thing that I want to look at right here is Texas. Their secondary is really good against overall on their overall schedule, right? So negative 0.259 EPA per attempt, which is fifth overall on Mickey Mouse attempts, and then negative 0.178 on Big Dog EPA attempts. The problem here is when we go to the Power 5 section, they're still very good against passes 9 yards or less, right? But when it gets further down the field, they are astronomically worse. Okay, 43rd overall, 58 in passes 20 yards more down the field versus Power 5 opponents. That could quite possibly be a recipe for disaster, simply because when you're looking at Georgia, all right, let's pull them up right here. They are 7th in deep percentage rate. So they are attempting passes 20 yards more down the field 19% of the time. And they're really good at that. They're 34th overall. That's solid, especially when you're attempting at such a high rate. Now, I know you're like, well, Andrew, you just said that, Georgia's abysmal down the field, right? Well, they are, okay? And Texas is pretty good in throwing the ball down the field, as has shown their 5th in deep EPA rate. But the problem is they're only attempting passes 10 yards or more down the field 31% of the time. And so realistically, you would like to see that higher In retrospect, Georgia's attempting 40%. I know you're like, oh, 10%, that's not a lot, right? Well, yeah, that's not a lot. You're right. 10% more, not a gigantic amount. But if we're talking 40 passes, that's 4 attempts. And I mean, that's a big difference in a game. Like, all it takes is one or two of those plays to just bust the game right wide open. Now, when we look at the advanced statistics side of the ball, remember these stats just filter out garbage time. I can't filter out strength of schedule, unfortunately. I wish I could. All right, so Georgia is struggling on their offensive line via stuff rate and line yards, right? But from an offensive standpoint, they are lacking in areas. You would like them to be a lot better than what they are. Texas is excelling in pretty much every single area defensively, right? And so when we go to the defensive side of the ball for Georgia, Texas is really solid. They've done really well. I mean, they pretty much overperformed against everybody not named Mississippi State, if we can be honest here. But there is some desire here. They're not elite at rushing the ball. They're not explosive in rushing the ball. Even though they are very good passing the ball, you would have to think that Kirby Smart is going to have something lined up to, at least counter this passing attack. And I said at the beginning of the year, like I've said several times, Texas has a very interesting plan of attack when it comes to throwing the ball. Okay? So last year they were the only teams to rank 25th, top 25 in behind the line of scrimmage attempts and medium attempts. Here we are again, 23.9% of their passes are behind the line of scrimmage. And then we come here again, they balanced that out a little bit more, 20% in the medium range. Okay? So they have a more balanced profile than normal. But the thing that stands out more than anything is they are still depending on those behind the line of scrimmage passes. They live on that screen game. And realistically, that is playing kind of to Georgia's, pseudo strength in the secondary. Now, yes, they're 63rd and behind the line of scrimmage, but look at the EPA. It's negative 0.138, okay? So they're going to take anything short. Georgia will take anything short, and they will rally to the ball versus if you're going to just take shots down the field, which is what Texas really should be doing. They should be taking more shots down the field. So now we go to the third down overall EPA, and you can see Texas – overall, they're 8th overall offensively and third overall defensively. But when we go to the side of against Power 5 teams, you can see that .374 on offense, which we'll take a look here, see if that's comparable. I'm pretty sure it is. .29. So, yeah, a little bit better, actually. And then defensively, negative 2.40 versus negative 4.7. So they're still very good defensively on third and fourth down, but not quite as good as that third overall ranking out of 134. So this comes down to a couple of things here. The line, I believe, is 3.5. It could be pushing towards 4. Let's take a look real quick. 4.5. That's pretty high. And so I think what we have to take a look at here, there are two things that I think really stand out to me. Okay, Texas has played a solid schedule for what it's worth. Okay, they went into Michigan, they beat Michigan, they beat Oklahoma, and that's great. They've beaten everybody on their schedule pretty much exactly how they should have beat them, except for Mississippi State, but nobody really is going to slight them for that, right? So when we go to the Georgia side, The Clemson win looks like infinitely better now, but I still don't think Clemson's that good. But, I digress. They come, roaring back against Alabama. They beat Auburn. They probably got a little look ahead game when they play Mississippi State there. And then the Kentucky game is just like, it's tough to wrap my brain around because Kentucky, for whatever reason, can just get up in these games. I mean, you saw it against Ole Miss. But it's it's hard to wrap the brain around, right? Because let's look at their games, right? They just lost to Vanderbilt, but don't let them play Georgia and Ole Miss because they're here for it, right? Just kind of funny. But anyway, I digress. So there's two things that stand out here. Okay, Georgia has played an infinitely harder schedule, and I feel as if they are not at their ceiling that they could be at. Now, that could be a litany of things. They could just either A, not be that good, as good as we thought they were. They're still very good. Don't take that wrong. Or B, that their trajectory is going higher as they play the season. And the other thing that I think is going underlooked here is this, okay? So I'm looking at blitz percentages from a defensive standpoint. All right, Alabama blitzes at the 132nd rate, 11.9% of the time. That is an extremely low rate, okay? And that means they're only sending more than 4 rushers 11.9% of the time. Now, when we come down to Texas, they do the exact same thing. Okay, they do not blitz a lot. Now, mind you, they're number 1 in EPA versus non-blitz attempts. But this is the thing, okay? Who on this schedule have they played that can actually throw the fucking ball? Nobody, okay? There's not a single quarterback at Michigan. There's not a single quarterback at Oklahoma, and God bless these other teams on this schedule. So, to me, that ranking is completely inflated based off who they've played. And I don't think that Georgia can get behind like they did against Alabama and come roaring back. I just don't think that's possible. I think Texas is way more balanced and a deeper team than Alabama. But with that being said, if they get off to a better start, Carson Beck is going to have all day throwing the ball. And the thing is, when we go to the advanced statistics side of it, yes, Georgia has struggled in offensive stuff rate, and offensive line yards. Those are rushing metrics. When it comes to front seven havoc allowed, they've been pretty good, 7.8%, and they will be going on a strength here. And it's very simple. If Texas cannot get there with 4, and they are going to continue to blitz at a very below average rate, this secondary is going to be tested like it has not been tested yet this year. And so when I look overall at how these attempts here, they're just doing really well, I just feel like there is a margin for error that is way wider than people are thinking. This line at 4.5 seems insane to me. Not because I don't think Texas is the better overall team, because I will say they are in the better overall spot, and they have looked like the better overall team to date. But that is hard to say because Georgia has played a way harder schedule, and Carson Beck is a light years better quarterback than Quinn Ewers. Now I'm not gonna say anything about Arch Manning because I haven't seen enough of him to make that decision. But if those are the quarterbacks playing, Carson Beck is better easily. And I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, Texas, you're getting Texas at their ceiling, and their ceiling is 4.5-point favorites against Georgia. Georgia, you're getting them kind of at what feels like a mid-level Georgia team. And I just don't feel like that's where it's going to land at the end of the year. I really think the 4.5 here is a gift. And I think, there's a lot to be said when it comes down to these type of matchups, right? Nothing against Sarkisian. He's an amazing play caller, top 5 in all of college football, going up against, a top 5 defensive mind in Kirby Smart. But when it comes to big games, Sarkisian has yet to cross that river. They got to they got to where they're at. Last year they played really well. They won the games they were supposed to win. And then Washington just got the best of them in the playoffs, even though they came down and almost won that game. But here's the thing. You're getting Georgia. I'm not buying a team at their ceiling. I just cannot do that. I will not do that. That is bad process, and I feel as if it's a bad take. Now, we could wake up Sunday morning and Texas could have just ramroded Georgia, and you just be like, bro, you missed this big time. I don't think that's going to happen. This could very well be a close game. I'm not saying Texas will not win, but Georgia plus 4.5 is a gift, and the money line is very well in play. And they have potential, and they have matchups here that they can take advantage of. And I believe they will. So that's going to be it for today's video. That is going to be my last one for the week. If you enjoy the content, please subscribe, comment, like, share it with a loved one, a friend, someone else who might find it interesting. It's a very small channel. It's growing from a very organic way, and I really enjoy doing the videos. I try to do as many as I can each week. I take all suggestions. I try to fit them into my schedule. I did half of the videos. I've only done 4 videos this week, and half of them were suggestions from subscribers. So I really appreciate that. But other than that, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.